Hi, I'm Katelynn Bouslog, Registrar and Assistant to the Chief Curator and Presenting Curator of Deep Rivers Long Roads, The Journey of America. This exhibition is unlike anything else the museum is putting together for the celebration of America's 250th birthday. We have pulled together the museum's permanent collection to tell about the American journey and the individual experiences that collectively have brought us to this place and time. We will talk about the resistance, the migrations, the heartaches, and the celebrations that have defined what it means to be an American. This exhibition is sponsored by Linda Beth and Ed Sutkowski, America 250 Donors, the Visionary Society, Museum Plus, Illinois Arts Council, and Midwest Agricultural Museum Endowment Fund. The exhibition opens by considering where the American journey takes root, in the land itself. Its rivers, valleys, and horizons have shaped survival and possibility, never passive, but sustaining communities and witnessing cycles of destruction and renewal. For indigenous nations, the land was a living relationship, grounding culture and identity with the nation's formation. It became something to claim and cultivate, valued for opportunity. Across generations, these differing understandings shaped how people engaged the landscape, each experience both individual and collective, continually refining its meaning. And this is one prime example of someone who was so drawn to the land that he left his home country to become an American. This is a piece by Hedley Waycott, who came to Peoria to visit some friends and ultimately fell in love with the Peoria Valley, depicted here in this painting behind me. Hedley Waycott would go on to reproduce this same image countless times. The Peoria Riverfront Museum in their permanent collection has 25 of these paintings alone. Hedley Waycott depicted the Illinois River Valley so precisely that people yearned to commission him for these exact paintings. And he didn't only do it from the view of Grandview Drive, he also took a closer look in many other areas up and down the Illinois River. But Hedley Waycott, coming from England, he saw the draw of being an American and ended up setting up shop in Peoria and became a frame maker. In the end, the land remains more than a backdrop. It is a force that has shaped, challenged, and sustained all who have encountered it. Its meaning has never been singular, but defined by those who live in relationship with it. In this shared yet contested space, the American journey begins. Deep Rivers Long Roads was actually inspired by a project by Nathan and Julie Gunn, who wanted to present a performance that spoke to the American experience or the American journey, which is where this title comes from. Nathan and Julie, as guest curators of performance here at the Peoria Riverfront Museum, wanted people to experience that journey through song, through this anthropology of 25 songs that spoke to that throughout the 250 years that America has been established. Nathan and Julie have inspired several other performances throughout the duration of this exhibition. We have had performances by REO Speedwagon. We've had performances by Joe George Shattuck, among many others. This exhibition was actually completely formed around a stage at the heart of it that not only have we used for performances, but it has drawn in a huge crowd of over 200 seniors for our senior morning when we've talked about the Promise of Liberty exhibition. And we've had our opening for the Promise of Liberty exhibition was held right here in this area where we welcomed 300 donors and members of the museum to celebrate the kickoff of America 250. And so this exhibition largely was created in response to a performance and not the other way around. And it is revolutionary in what the museum is trying to accomplish here. From that foundation, we move to where the relationship to land becomes personal. The vast landscape narrows into the intimate spaces of home, places where identity forms and traditions take root. Here, individuals and families carry their histories with them, blending memory and adaptation to create meaning in unfamiliar surroundings. For many, this process was shaped by immigration, the act of arriving with one cultural identity and gradually forging another. Languages, customs, and beliefs were not abandoned, but interpreted within a new context, creating layered identities that unfolded within the home, both inherited and newly constructed. In this section, the American journey transforms space into place,
grounding the broader national story and lived experience while shaping what it means to become American.
And this is one example where I think people really came together to try to grapple with what that identity meant for them. With the rise of photography, it profoundly started to shape the way that people saw themselves. People started to document births, marriages, personal experiences. And today, we would largely do the same thing, except we often take it for granted. As someone who went to go have their picture taken in the turn of the century and even earlier, like these photographs or amblyoptypes, this would have been an entirely new experience for them and something that they would have taken very seriously. They would have worn their best clothes, they would have put personal touches in their hands or in the backgrounds, and so people could see who they were and what they wanted to present as their own identity. My particular favorite one within this collection is this one in the back of this young gentleman, and unfortunately we don't know who this gentleman is. We know that he came from Bishop Hill, Illinois, an immigrant community, but other than that, his name has been lost to history. But what I particularly enjoy about it is not only was he trying to tell us who he was through the style of dress and props that he would have presented, but he also put within the case the Union now and forever. And so he was trying to tell people his political beliefs, perhaps, or how he felt about his own experience being an American or an immigrant.
Here the American story becomes intimate. Within the home, identity is not inherited whole, but continuously shaped through memory, adaptation, and everyone's daily life. It is in these spaces that belonging is forged, turning vast landscape into lived experience and giving personal meaning to a national narrative. From these spaces of home emerges a sense of yearning, the impulse to move beyond what is known, long associated with the American dream. Yet this section suggests that such longing is not solely about fame or grandeur, but about the search for identity and community. It reflects a profound shift in human history, the possibility that social mobility and even stability might be within reach. Individuals looked out once more, drawn by opportunity and belief that life could be reshaped. At the same time, the journey acknowledges the hardships and obstacles that often accompany that pursuit. The tension between staying and striving propelled both personal ambition and national growth, revealing aspiration as both a promise and also a challenge.
What I love about this piece, titled Flossie Cabanas, is it shows a young woman who tried to yearn for something bigger than herself and try to achieve that, and she fails. And ultimately, it doesn't mean that she fails in her life, it just means that she failed in this particular chapter. And I think there's still an optimism to it. This piece comes to us through the Spoon River Anthology project, which was inspired by Edgar Lee Masters' Spoon River Anthology poems. And Flossie Cabanas is one of those. Edgar Lee Masters went to cemeteries in Spoon River, and he put words, he put inspirational ideas about each of those people that may or may not be true, but this is one of those poems that he includes in his works. And this story goes, from Bindle's Opera House in the village to Broadway is a great step, but I tried to take it, my ambition fired. When 16 years of age, seeing East Lynne played here in the village by Ralph Barrett, the coming romantic actor, who enthralled my soul. True, I trailed back home a broken failure, when Ralph disappeared in New York, leaving me alone in the city. But life broke him also. In all this place of silence there are no kindred spirits. How I wish Deuce could stand amid the pathos of these quiet fields and read these words. This piece by Barbara Cactus is evocative of the fact that there are so many trying to achieve so many different stories and so many different paths that it is extremely competitive and not everyone succeeds at it. But what I want people to take away from this section is that glory doesn't have to be found by being on a Broadway stage. It can be from your own personal connection to the community and own personal satisfaction within themselves.
Yearning reminds us that the American journey is never still. It is driven by the belief that something more is possible, even in the face of uncertainty. This tension between hope and hardship continues to propel individuals forward, shaping both personal paths and the nation's evolving promise. That ambition is sustained in the next section through the endeavor of millions of Americans. The steady labor of working the land, and later, of factories and their communities, underlies the nation's progress. The pursuit of opportunity requires work that is often repetitive, demanding, and often goes unrecognized. Yet it is through this collective effort that aspiration was transformed into stability, building the foundation upon which the country continues to stand.
And here we see Grant Wood's March piece. Now, this was a series of pieces that essentially explored the American Midwest throughout all seasons and all months. It depicts a rural American landscape that was, again, shaped by that labor that generations would have worked tirelessly on. And this would have been a land that would have been passed down from father to son and would have been a point of pride for many Americans to have a portion of this land in which to call their own and to feel like not only were they able to sustain their own family, but they were able to provide for their own community. Ultimately, what regionalists show is that it takes the work of many hands in order to transform both the land and a social life overall. And we see throughout many of the regionalist paintings in this exhibition that many Americans did this in various different ways over those generations, whether it is through horse and buggy, whether it's through carting, whether it's through the innovation of the Industrial Revolution and the new machinery that was able to cultivate it.
Endeavor reveals that progress is not simply imagined, it is built. Through sustained effort and collective labor, aspiration takes form in the everyday work that continues to support communities and sustains growth. It is here that the promise of opportunity is made tangible. In our final section, we turn to Americans who refuse to be satisfied with what society was, reminding us that the national story is never immovable. Through challenge, disruption, and the courage to question what exists, individuals and communities have continuously reshaped the nation. Progress emerges through this tension and ensures that the journey remains ongoing and open to re-examination.
And here we have Peoria-born Betty Friedan, and objects that relate to her experiences as a woman growing up in the 1950s and 1960s when she herself realized that there was a problem that needed to be addressed. Betty Friedan went to Smith College, an all-female college. After, she went on to be a journalist, and she went on to be a wife and a mother. At her 15-year reunion at Smith College, she decided that she wanted to ask the alumna that she had known in previous years what their experiences had been like in the preceding years. Many of these women submitted anonymous questionnaires in which address what their experiences had been like. In these anonymous questionnaires, she asked many personal questions. Are you single, married, widowed, or divorced? Do you enjoy being with your husband more than anyone else? Did you enjoy pregnancy? And the answers are complex and ever-changing between them. These conversations that she was having prompted her to write a book called The Feminine Mystique. And this book that you see on display here is in our permanent collection. It is a first edition signed copy from Betty herself. And this book was pivotal when it was published in 1963 because it kicked off the second wave feminist movement in the 1960s and in the 1970s that started to ask the question, what is the women's experience as their roles as mothers and wives only? And a lot of these women, they had a real problem with only being defined in these roles. They wanted a larger experience. They wanted to go to work. And she asked a question that has no name. She defines that. And this is something that millions of women thought that was only happening within themselves. But this book made them realize that it was a societal phenomenon. Change affirms that the American story is unfinished. It is shaped by those willing to question, to disrupt, and to push beyond what is accepted. In this continuous process of reflection and renewal, the nation moves forward, imperfectly but persistently, towards a more expansive future. Together, these sections reveal the American story as a continuous process rather than a fixed narrative. It begins with the land, shaping possibility and conflict, then moves inward to the spaces of home, where identity and belonging take root.
From there emerges a restless yearning to grow, to move, and to redefine one place in the world. That ambition is sustained through the labor of millions whose daily efforts transform aspiration into reality. And ultimately, it is reshaped through change, through those who challenge, question, and push this nation forward. What emerges is not a single story, but a layered and ever-evolving one, defined by tension and resilience, by memory and reinvention. Deep Rivers, Long Roads invites us to see America not as something complete, but as something continuously in the making, shaped by the people who move through it and the paths they choose to create. I hope you enjoyed this in-depth look at the exhibition and invite you to stay engaged with the Peoria Riverfront Museum as we continue to identify and analyze this journey through our series of exhibitions and programs over the semi-quincentennial celebration.